All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something that shapes pretty much every single street, building, and park in your city, but it's something most of us never actually see. It isn't made of concrete or steel, but believe me, it is just as powerful. We are talking about the invisible rulebook of real estate, zoning.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. You've seen this, right? A huge, brand new skyscraper shoots up right next to a quiet little park. Or maybe a bunch of stores just suddenly appears in the middle of a totally residential neighborhood. Have you ever just stopped and thought, who gets to decide that? Why here? And why this specific thing?
Well, it turns out the answer to all of those questions lies in what we're calling the invisible rulebook. It's this complex web of regulations that dictates the very fabric of our communities, and you know what? Today, we're going to make it visible.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by figuring out what this rulebook even is. Then, we'll learn how to decode its secret language. After that, we'll see how you can actually change the rules, look at how investors use this playbook to their advantage, and finally, we'll peek into the future to see where it's all going. Sound good? Let's go.
First up, the invisible rulebook itself. So what is zoning really? The easiest way to think about it is this. Policy and zoning are the regulatory backbone of all real estate. It's the system that holds everything up.
So here's the official definition. Zoning is basically the legal tool that cities use to chop up all the land into different districts or zones. And for each one of those zones, the city sets very specific rules. Now, the original idea, the whole why behind it, was to protect public health and safety. It's the government's way of making sure a loud, polluting factory doesn't get built right next to your kid's elementary school. It separates things that just don't belong together to create a more orderly, predictable city.
Okay, so we know what it is. Now, how do we actually read this rulebook? Let's dive in and decode the map and its core mechanics. You know, the basic language of a zoning map is actually pretty straightforward. Every city map is color-coded with these categories. You've got C for commercial, that's your shops, your offices. You've got R for residential, which is exactly what it sounds like, where people live. I or M stands for industrial, think factories and warehouses. And now, more and more, you're seeing mixed use, which, yep, just combines a bunch of these. This is basically the alphabet of urban planning. But it's not just about what letter your property gets. Inside each zone, there are 4 key types of rules. First, there are use restrictions, which tell you what you can do. Then you've got density controls, which tell you how much you can build. Dimensional requirements dictate where on the actual lot you can build. And of course, the one we all love to hate, parking requirements, which tell you where all the cars need to go. Now, let's zoom in on density for a minute, because frankly, this is where the big money is made or lost. And the key concept you have to understand is something called floor area ratio, or FAR. This is the magic number that tells you the total amount of square footage you can build compared to the size of your land. Think of it like a multiplier for your property's ultimate potential. Let me show you how it works in practice. So let's say you have a 10,000 square foot piece of land, and the city's rulebook says that lot has an FAR of 3.0. Well, you just multiply the two together, and boom, you are legally allowed to build a 30,000 square foot building. It could be 3 stories tall covering the whole lot, or maybe it's 6 stories tall covering half of it. The total volume is what the FAR controls. And here's the thing you absolutely have to remember. That one little number, the FAR, is probably the single most important factor in determining a property's development potential, and because of that, its financial value. A tiny little change in that number can literally mean millions of dollars in value, just like that.
Which of course leads to a very important question. What if you don't like the rules? I mean, can you actually change them? And the answer is yes, sometimes. Let's take a look at how you do it.
So, there are 2 main ways you can go about this. You can either try to bend the rules, or you can try to rewrite them completely. Bending the rules is called getting a variance. This is for a pretty minor change, and you usually have to prove your property has some kind of unique physical problem, like it's a really weird shape or on a steep hill, that makes it impossible to follow the rules exactly. Now, rewriting the rules, that's rezoning. This is the big one. This is when you want to do something completely different with the property, like turning an old factory into brand new apartments. That's a full-on legislative process that involves public hearings, city council votes, the whole shebang. Okay, so knowing the rules and even knowing how to change them is one thing. But how do developers and investors actually use this knowledge to turn a profit? Well, welcome to the investor's playbook.
Before any smart investor buys a piece of property, they go through a critical process called due diligence. It's basically their homework. They run through a checklist just like this one. Does the zoning actually match my business plan? Is there any unused potential here? Any extra FAR I can build? Are there any hidden restrictions or problems I don't know about? I mean, this is the essential detective work that separates a fantastic deal from an absolute financial disaster.
This quote from our source material really just sums it up perfectly. Understanding policy and zoning isn't just about compliance. It's about identifying opportunities, mitigating risks, and maximizing value. See, it's not just a bureaucratic hurdle you have to jump over. It's a strategic tool you can use.
And this is exactly how they use that tool. The classic value creation play goes like this. Step 1. Find an underutilized property. Maybe it's an old empty warehouse in a neighborhood that's suddenly getting popular. Step 2. Go through that whole political process to get the zoning changed. Step 3. Achieve what's called a higher and better use for that land, like building those apartments we talked about. And step 4, by doing all that, you unlock a massive amount of financial value that just wasn't there before.
But here's the thing, this rulebook isn't some ancient text carved in stone. It is constantly evolving to meet the new challenges our cities are facing. So for our final section, let's look at the future of zoning and how that rulebook is being rewritten right now as we speak.
These changes are happening all over the place, and they're all responses to bigger problems. Cities are getting rid of mandatory parking spots near transit to fight climate change. They're making it easier to build small backyard cottages, or ADUs, to tackle the housing crisis. There's also a huge push for sustainability, requiring things like green roofs and EV chargers. The point is, the rulebook is a living document, and it's constantly adapting to the times.
So this brings us to the final crucial thought. Every single one of these rules, from the number of parking spots to the height of a skyscraper, is decided by people. They're the end result of community meetings, of political debates, of powerful economic forces. So the real question isn't just what the rules are today, but as our cities keep changing and evolving, who is going to get to write the next chapter?